Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Real Life Process podcast. I am so glad that you're with us today because we are celebrating. Yes, we're celebrating episode number 200. I cannot believe that we are celebrating today, episode number 200, but we are. And so we're going to talk today on this podcast about all the ways that the podcast has grown and shaped and become what it is. And we're going to talk about what the future holds. So let's dive in to the Real Life Process podcast. Before we get there, I actually want to tell you about some things we have going on. If you're not aware, and this is maybe your very first time listening to the podcast, we want to tell you about our brand new book. The brand new book that I have coming out called Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. And we are launching that book here on November 1st, 2022. It's already out there in the Kindle version, and we want to encourage you to either purchase the Kindle version or pre-order the paperback version because we have some great pre-order bonuses for you. The first of those bonuses is actually a documentary titled Rested Success that's going to be produced by Visible TV. I'm actually traveling to Nashville next week to finish up that documentary, and we are super excited about that film. And as a pre-order bonus, you get access to that film called Rested Success. The other thing that you'll receive as a pre-order bonus is a downloadable Real Life Process workbook that will walk you through the signature tools of the process. So PDF download that you can walk through all 4 components with us as you read the book. You'll have all the material and everything you need. Bonus content because you've pre-ordered the book. And then the last thing that we're doing is 4 additional group coaching calls, which I'll be teaching. Those calls, we'll be doing them over Zoom. They'll be live, and there'll be additional content on all 4 of those calls that you don't find in the book that are great things that supplement the work you're doing to live from rest, not rush. Now, the easiest way to get all of these pre-order bonuses is to go to dowhatmattersbook.com. dowhatmattersbook.com. You can find all the ways that you can purchase the book at your favorite book supplier, pre-order it, come back, put in your name, your invoice number, and you'll get access to those pre-order bonuses as soon as they launch November 1st. So they'll be available right after the book launches. We'll get into your inbox and tell you all about those things. So make sure you go to dowhatmattersbook.com to get all the pre-order bonuses. So now that we have that out of the way, we can begin to celebrate all the things about having the podcast out now for 200 episodes. So stay with me. This is going to be a pretty short episode itself, but I want you to hear where we're headed here at the Real Life Process, what I have coming up next, and even some of my reflections on doing a podcast since 2019. So let me start there. I actually went back and re-listened to our 100th episode. It was so fun to go back and reflect on recording that 100th episode. A friend of mine, Chris Niemeyer, actually reverse interviewed me for that episode, and other friends like Chad Jeffers, a musician from Nashville that plays music in the Nashville area, and also Chris McCluskey, who I work with at Professional Christian Coaching, and Michelle Vosberg, a good friend of mine, and Mark Ross, one of our certified facilitators now, all came on and congratulated me at the beginning of that episode. And that was put together by my team. It was so awesome to go back and kind of sit in that moment for just a minute and remember all of those great things about that 100th episode. But what it also made me realize is from 2019 to here we are in the fall of 2022, just how far my business has grown, how much I've grown personally, how much things have pivoted and shifted and changed since 2019. So I just want to reflect on that and talk about that through the lens even of the podcast and how it's transformed. When I first started this podcast in 2019, I only had one other team member, very part-time, and we were putting this together. I was doing all the editing. I remember recording those first 3 episodes. I hired a friend of mine to kind of help launch the podcast, and it's actually called The Enneagram in Your Real Life. And I really focused in those first probably 80 to 90 episodes on the Enneagram, a personality tool that I absolutely love. And we had all kinds of conversations. I talked to lots of different people, interviewed a lot of people, and really established that tool and who I was with that tool. And we did really well. We were in the top 25, sometimes Enneagram podcasts, and we were really doing well in the podcast space around that particular niche. And I remember some people telling me not to niche that narrow in my podcast. But when I look back, I'm glad I followed my gut around that because it really helped me discover who I wanted to be in the podcasting world and where I wanted to go, not only in podcasting, but in my business overall. And I realized I didn't want to be known as just a person who used the tool of the Enneagram. It's a wonderful tool, but there's so much more to moving from our being to our doing. And having a really foundational, real self, as we talk about in the components of the process and in the book that I wrote, how I talk about that deeper work of knowing your being, your internal self. Who are you? And what are your needs and your values? And the Enneagram is a part of that, but it's not everything. It can be a part of that. There are other tools as well that you might like to use. So I began to shift and to make some discernment and to discern where my business was growing to, where my voice was growing to. It's one of the things that I love about a podcast. If you've not considered using podcasting as getting your voice into the world, I want to encourage you. If you have that desire in your heart, podcasting is a great way to do that. And I'm more committed than I've ever been now that we have the book finished and I have that out into the market and it will be coming out this fall. I'm more committed than ever to doing a great podcast. So we shifted the podcast to be called the Real Life Process Podcast. During COVID, as we were walking through all of those beginning things of the lockdown, that became one of our shifts. And it was risky. I'll be honest to say, it was very risky because the Enneagram, we ranked high, we could do well there, we could have guests come on and talk. And now it was really branching out and saying, I want to stand on the content and the voice that I want to be in the world. And when we did that, and then I began to write the book and I began to walk through that process, I began to find my voice, the message that I wanted to bring to the world. And podcasting was one of the ways that I could make that shift and begin to put it out there. And it's evergreen content. It's almost like journaling through talking. And I'm sure, when we get to 300 episodes, I'll look back on this episode and I'll remember where I was in my own growth, my personal development, my growth as a coach, my growth as an author, my growth as a podcaster and a speaker. And I'll remember this episode and this moment. It's one of the things I love about podcasting. So as we made that shift, we did see some of our numbers go down in our podcast and our listenership because we were a brand new voice now in the market and we had to find our voice. And it's taken a year or so for us to find that voice again. But I so believe in podcasting. I have put out a podcast every single week. Only once, maybe twice, but I know once for sure, have I repeated an episode and done like a best of episode. So since 2019 to now, I've put out new content each and every week here on the podcast. And as we get ready to, jump from 2000 to 2001 episodes, I want to share with you what that looks like going forward. But before I do, I want to say thank you, because some of you have been listening to this podcast from the very beginning. And you are my friends. You are part of my community. You are part of the Real Life Process community. Whether you're a listener, whether you've been a client at one time, whether you're a current client, whether you're one of our certified facilitators, because that was part of the pivot that I made back in 2020, is as people were listening to the podcast, as they were a part of some paid communities that we had, they were asking, how can we use the work that you're doing, these steps that you have, these components that you've put together to walk people through, moving them from living from rush to living to rest, from being in the doing to being in the being, and then coming back up to what's the work there to do in the world. Can we use your content to do that? And as my good friend Dan Miller says, and I've quoted him on this so many times, if people ask you 2 to 3 times about something, you need to pay attention. And so I did. And I said, yes, what would this make possible? And we formed our certified facilitator program. And now we certify people across the United States and into other countries to use our content, our framework in the work that they do. And that framework is inside of my brand new book, Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. So whether you're an individual, whether you're a coach or an entrepreneur, you can get the book, read the framework, and I'd love to hear your feedback on you creating your real life process. So as we made that pivot in 2020, you saw the podcast pivot. And thank you for staying with us. Thank you for listening, for being a part of the journey that we've been on. And it's been great to partner with some of you on the journey that you're on as a coach, an entrepreneur, a consultant, a spiritual director, a client. It's so fun to partner with you in those places. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your faithfulness and your loyalty and doing this journey with me. It's so fun sometimes when I hear from you and I get to hop on a call with some of you as listeners and you say, I feel like I know you already. I know your voice. I know all about your farm. I know about your dog, Allie. I know about your son's story and the loss of your son in 2017. And you feel like you know us and you know me and you know my family. And I love that. I love that we have that connection and that deep relationship all through a podcast. But what I want to share with you is, where are we going? Where are we headed in episode 2001 episode 201 and beyond? So let me share with you. And as I was thinking about this, I couldn't help but go back to our core values. The core values of the company, of the Real Life Process, our business. What are our core values? So I'm going to give you the future of this podcast through the lens of our core values. Here's the first one: be present. So here's how I want to show up on the podcast each and every week. I want to let you know what's happening in my life. What's happening in my life? What's happening in my business? Where am I headed? What am I doing? What's going on personally and professionally? And I hope you'll enjoy those little snippets. For example, next week, I am getting ready after this weekend and I get all packed up. I'm getting ready to go on 2 weeks of travel. The first week, I'm going to be in Nashville all week, and I'm going to be at a friend of mine, Mike Kim's event. And I'm going to be getting to take the platform there and share some content. And I'm so grateful for that and for Mike's invitation. And I'm super excited to be in Nashville with a bunch of other people that are in these masterminds that he has, and to be able to share there, to be able to hang out with some good friends of mine, have dinner, and do some other things. I love the Nashville, Franklin area. So I'm super excited about that. I'm also going to be finishing up the documentary that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode with my friend Paul Klein at Visible TV. And we're going to have that all produced and ready to go by the first of the month. I'm super excited about that. Then the next week, I'm going to travel to Florida to be with my friend Dan Miller. I've been a part of Dan's mastermind for quite some time, and it is one of my favorite communities to be in. In fact, my friend Paul that I mentioned is also in that mastermind. So I'm going to be down in Florida, down in the Sarasota area for 3 or 4 days, masterminding and growing my business with those people. They challenge me. They keep me fresh. They keep me accountable. So many authors and podcasters and entrepreneurs in that mastermind. And I just love that community. So I'm on the road for a couple of weeks. Here on the farm, we are full into harvest. And my daughter, Annika, that helps my husband, Dale, on the farm, they are farming away. That's the other business that we have. And but I'm going to be out traveling for a couple of weeks. And sometimes I'll be honest, that's hard when it falls during the harvest season. And I feel that pull of where I should be. But I go with their blessing and I go with their support. And so I'll be on the road. So I want to show up present, letting you know what's happening in my life. And even sometimes some of the difficult decisions I make about that as I grow my business. The other one is I want to be real. That's a core value for my company and my business. I want to share with you real life stuff, tough stuff that might be happening, and also wonderful, joyous things like the launching of a book. And I want to talk more about that in some of our upcoming episodes. How do we hold both the hard things and the joyful things, the sorrow and the joy at the same time? Because that's real life, the real life process. That's what we do. So we're going to talk about that in some upcoming episodes because I have some of those things going on right now. And I want to be real and I want to be honest with you around those things. So be present, be real. The third one is to bring joy. I want this to be fun. I want it to be a great space that you want to come and listen to, that has energy, that has joy, that has a smile. Joy can be such a beautiful thing. And I want to bring people on that will bring joy to your life, whether it's the information that they bring in an interview that you're like, that's exactly what I needed to learn. That's what I needed to know about myself. That's what I needed to know about moving myself forward or moving my business forward. That's what I needed to know. And that's exactly, or they just have such a great presence about them that it's so fun to hang out with them. So I want this to be a joyful place where I invite people that are being a light out into the world to come and have conversation. And maybe there's somebody that you've never heard or you don't know, but I do, and I can introduce them to you. The fourth thing, so be present, be real, bring joy. And then the fourth thing is create impact. That's my fourth value for our company. So I love the work that I do, and I want to share it with the world. I want it to be impactful with the world. I love when I hear stories about how the components of the real life process, the real life being, discovering that deeper knowing of yourself, the real life action, putting what you know into action and into growth in those areas in your life, the real life time, looking at time differently, and real life living, the rest, the renew, the review piece. Taking those components, I love when I hear stories of breakthroughs and connections and relationships that are going on because clients are willing to take the deeper pause and really do some of that deeper work to know yourself so that you can be who you were created to be out into the world and in your real life. That's what our facilitators do. That's what everybody on our team does. We don't have it all figured out, but we're working on it and we're creating impact. And I know for many of you, that's your deepest desire is to create impact. So come hang out with me here on the podcast and let's figure it out together how we can create impact that we're called to do, that God has for us to do. I believe that out into the world. And that can look so different. I have clients everywhere from people in business spaces to owning brick and mortars, to people in the coaching space, to entrepreneurs, to just people being moms and dads. I work with all kinds of people, and all those situations can be impactful when we see it through a new lens. So I want to help you create impact, and I want to create impact through this podcast. So that gives me a great framework for how we're going to move forward. I want to be present with you, what's happened in my life and my business. I want to be real with you in both the hard things and the joyful things, the celebration moments. I want to bring joy through the people that I invite in and that we show up with joy. And I want to create impact through the podcast, through the content that we create, to what we put out into the world, and help you to do the same. So I don't know when you've connected with us or how you've connected with us as your very first episode to listen to, or you've listened to hundreds now of episodes. Either way, we hope you stick around. I hope you stay with us. Myself and my team, we love doing the work that we do. I'm so blessed with the team that we have, with the certified facilitators that we have in our network, and the work that they're doing out in the world. That's been such a huge growth for us in the past couple of years. But I want to leave you with this as we wrap up episode 200, where we've been, where we're going, is how do you connect with us? How do you stay connected with us outside of these 20 to 30 to 40 minutes we might share together every week here on the podcast? Well, here's how. You can send me a private message, or a DM as they call it, through Instagram, through Facebook private message, or through LinkedIn. I check all three of those platforms on a regular basis. And if that's an easy way for you to connect with me, I'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast. I'd love to hear even which one of those values resonates with you. Be present, be real, bring joy, create impact. I would just love to hear from you. After any episode, if you have a thought, if you have a question, that's another thing I want to do, is answer some questions on the podcast. Any of those things, I'd love to hear from you through those private messaging. Or if you're like me and good old-fashioned email works, I could love to hear from you through that method as well. Teresa at thereallifeprocess.com. Teresa at thereallifeprocess.com is my email address. And you can always shoot me an email. Just listen to the podcast. I loved this. We also have a Facebook community called the Real Life Process Community. Right now in that community, we are in book launch mode, and we are launching the book, and we'd love to have you hop over there and join the Real Life Process community and be a part of all of that. We have a great community over there, and we'd love for you to connect with us there. So social media, all those private messaging ways, you can email me, you can come into our Facebook community, or the very last one is you can go to our website at thereallifeprocess.com. We spell real life with one L, thereallifeprocess.com. Scroll down the page and you'll see a tab where you can click on that says Work with Teresa, Work with Me. And you click on that tab, and we'll have you fill out a form of all different kinds of ways that you and I personally could work together. And we can schedule a call. We can hop on for 20 or 30 minutes and talk about where you are right now in your life and what might be a way that we can work together and move forward. I'm open to all those ideas, to all those ways of us connecting, but one of my favorite things to do is connect with you. So because of that, we're going to keep showing up here. I'm going to be here each and every week. We drop the episodes on Wednesday mornings, and I will be here next week for episode 201, and we'll be doing it from now till who knows when, but we're going to show back up to be present, be real, bring joy, and create impact here at the Real Life Process Podcast. If you've been around for very long, you know that one of the things that I practice each and every day is posting on Facebook, on my personal page, an extraordinary moment. And there's a whole long story behind that. We can go back and tag that episode if you want to know that story. But it ties back to me noticing that every day has an extraordinary moment. And to be honest, I would say this one is it today, recording episode number 200. Never, ever did I dream that this would be the path that God would have me on, to record a 200th episode, to publish a book, to have a certified facilitator program. I am so grateful. So every day on Facebook, just because it's a place that I can hold that content, I take a picture and I publish that picture and I write a little something called Extraordinary Moments. And so this will be it today. If you want to follow me over on my personal page, come join me there as well, and we can connect on Facebook in that way. Because as I close every podcast, and will continue to do so because of this, I say, every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. And we'll be back next week right here on the podcast for episode 201. Have a great week, everyone.